Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, over our last 3 days, we've seen Tropical Storm Fred dump a lot of rain starting in the Cotton Belt and finishing here in the Northeast, some places picking up well in excess of 6 inches. And a stalled out frontal boundary produced a lot of excess rainfall in parts of Texas over here toward the Red River Valley of the south. But it's been the wave that's coming through the Intermountain West right now, coming out of parts of Utah into Wyoming. I'm going to be watching carefully. A lot of severe weather out ahead of it expected today and tonight in this area. We're going to watch that translate farther to the east tomorrow, and we're going to be filling in some areas that have been quite dry as of late. We're going to look at a quick analysis of that in a few moments. But how about some of the latest satellite data here? We can see where, here, if we just go back over much of this afternoon, a lot of scattered storms in parts of the Midwest. Bigger storms kind of lined up here on the frontal boundary, on the leading edge of which is a little shortwave right in through this area. Scattered storms in the southern plains, and these storms really taking off this afternoon, some of them producing some very, very heavy rainfall, some hail, and we anticipate some of these being capable of producing tornadoes. What's left of Fred is still exiting here, but we're still talking about another tropical system. Now, earlier in the week, I mispronounced this. The name is actually Henri, not Henry, and I want to talk to you about what's going on with Henri. And the reason why is because the other systems, Grace, for example, will be moving toward Mexico. Fred is done and is on his way out here to the Canadian Maritimes and eventually out into the Atlantic. But we've seen some shifts in the track of Henri, which I think the European models captured pretty well here. The 12Z European model runs, their ensembles take, the majority of them take it here in toward parts of New England, specifically Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and that area before allowing this to jump back out. And what's going on is by the time we get out to the 21st, where Henri's circulation is here, there's actually a trough just to its west, a ridge to the north, and another ridge that's here over Bermuda. And the net effect of that flow is to push Henri, possibly at hurricane strength, toward New England. Now, it will dissipate and not be a hurricane when it gets to New England, but it could add some pretty heavy rainfall in that area. In terms of what else is going to be happening in the tropics, we do notice that based on the position of the MJO, we're going to be seeing out there days 6 through 10 some really good upper level support in the Eastern Pacific and the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. And looking out there that far, I noticed that the European ensemble had given a better than 50% chance both here and in through here of developing tropical systems. Now, what we're going to be concerned about is if that gets into the Gulf of Mexico, because we've noticed that throughout much of this summer, the flow has been able to push things to the north here, and that could influence the Cotton Belt up to the Corn Belt and right here up the gut of the Mississippi. Should something form, I'm going to watch it all weekend. I'll keep reporting back to you on what I see for late next week. But to understand this summer growing season, I made a few maps I want to discuss with you here. The first one is looking here at the time period of June 1st through August 17th. And there's a color coding in the background, and there are several numbers. And those numbers represent percent of normal. Now, we can see where things have clearly been well above normal on precipitation, but I'd like to now show you what happens when I get rid of everything that's above 60%. And what this allows us to do is identify those regions that are, to be honest, is desperate for rainfall at this point in the season. Now, with the troughs coming into the northwest and ejecting in the plains, we're going to make some major improvements here and some spotty improvements in through this area. But to keep going with this idea, I also wanted to produce a map that showed you the number of times it rained more than 1/10 of an inch of rain over that 78-day time period, June 1st through August the 17th. Pause the video and take a closer look at this, because you're going to see several locations in here, especially in the central and northern plains, that are in the single digits. So maybe only raining 6, 7, 8 times in the last 78 days, and many of those rains were quite disappointing. It's just a way for me to kind of gauge what's going on with this growing season. So tonight, I'm concerned about this area for the potential for some strong storms. All three major hazards, hail, straight line winds, and tornadic circulations are possible. And tomorrow that translates to the east. So that frontal boundary is sliding in this direction. So let's take a good look here at the next 3 days by looking at our NAM model. Let's take it back to just about this afternoon when I was recording this video. Let's go and blow this up so we can see a little bit better. Now you're going to notice that outside of this main wave here, a lot of scattered convection in that stalled out boundary here and what's left of Fred. So as we press through this evening, it's going to be here in the high plains that I'm going to be watching most carefully. Heavy rains in Montana, southern Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, they're going to be moving into there. As I go into the overnight hours tonight and then come out tomorrow morning, our deeper wave producing a broad shield of precipitation over some of those very dry locations. Wet in the mid-Atlantic, possibly some storms tucked into the mid-South. But you're going to see as I go through the day on Friday that frontal boundary reemerges here, right on the border between the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Iowa, possibly stretching back into Nebraska and Kansas as well, and maybe even some scattered storms all the way down here to the Rio Grande. Out ahead of it, again, another day of scattered storm development. And that's going to move throughout the day on Friday through Minnesota, through Iowa. It's not a broad shield of rainfall, but it's going to be delivering some heavier precip at times. And that could extend back into Kansas as well. And just playing this forward through Saturday morning, let's just stop at 7 a.m. Saturday. The front still holds together here at that time. Our next wave is coming into the Pacific Northwest. You can see it very clearly right here. And the European model's attempt at predicting Henri, which we don't trust. Oh, I'm sorry, the NAM. This is the NAM, not the European. The NAM we don't often trust for its prediction of tropical systems. Well, it's got it right there. And playing this forward, there's the possibility on Saturday afternoon and evening that front makes it all the way to Michigan and Indiana. And again, scattered storms in parts of the Mid-South, the Tennessee Valley, back toward the southeast. And wave number 2 emerges. Now, that's your next 3 days kind of wrapped up tight there. The bigger picture things I want to just put into 3 different graphics, kind of showing you what's going to happen in the next week. Now, this is the European model's treatment of total precipitation through the next week. And what I'd like to compare it to is the GFS. So European and GFS. Now, feel free to just pause it and take a closer look at this. We're going to see repeated troughs coming into the northwest. There's going to be one coming in through here. There's going to be a bigger one that cuts in like this. We still have a stalled out boundary over parts of the mid-south, more storms in the southeast. Henri doing that, Grace here. All right? Outside of that, in between, a lot of scattered storms. Remember the frontal boundary that stretches through Saturday? That's where it's going. Now again, European to GFS. And what I want to show you next is their difference. So this is using the 12Z models. Wherever you see these colors, the GFS is wetter. Wherever you see these, the European is wetter. So the European bringing Henri closer inshore than what the GFS is doing, keeping it offshore. Now, if I were in Indiana right now, I'd be rooting for the GFS to bring in that rain to finish off the crop in this area. But the European doesn't do it because of how quickly it pulls these troughs farther to the north. So notice the European is wetter all in this area and back here as well, whereas the GFS is wetter on the backside. So just take note of these differences. About the one place where I do absolutely trust the European is over the south and southeast. This has been an area that all season long the GFS has been way too dry, and the European's been getting this right, and we see that once again here. Now I know I went through that quickly, but European to GFS and the difference. Please stop and take a look. I want to summarize it best by showing you this graphic though. Through the next week, what are the chances of grabbing an inch of rain? That's what's shown here. So we have the stalled out front of the Mid-South, Tennessee Valley. That's where we're going to be expecting some heavy precip, and it's happening right now. Along the coast, Henri. And then what you see up here is you see the heavy rains coming out of North Dakota, spreading into southern Saskatchewan, southern Manitoba, and eventually along the border here between Manitoba. I got my Canadian provinces wrong today. Between Manitoba and Ontario. In between, a lot of scattered storms in this area. That means hit or miss. Now from here, let me show you the week 2 pattern, because both the GFS and the European put a ridge here in the Bering Sea, a ridge over the Hudson Bay, and a trough coming into the northwest. Quite flat flow here, but that trough is expected to move through, which is why the GFS says, you know what, we're going to keep this area above average on storms. Now I know if you're in Minnesota going, thanks, another forecast where you're saying above average in week 2 and it never materializes. And I get it, that's been a weak point of these models all summer long. You should expect that to continue. But I want to show you that the European model has the same features. Ready? Ridge, ridge, broader trough, and it moves. So that's why the European model also has above average precipitation for week 2. But I'll tell you something, if I lived here and I were seeing this forecast right now, I'd be saying, I'll believe it when I see it. And that is something that we've seen all summer long. The lack of the local source of moisture in that area has robbed these storms of their potential. And I'm scared that that's going to happen again, all right? I think that's what's going to go on again. But as I've stated, the European's been much better across the south, and I expect that to continue as well. To finish this up, let's talk temperatures. We're going to look at GDUs. This is how many GDUs we've accumulated since April 1st of this year. Now pause it and take a closer look at your local number. For a lot of corn and soybean growers, though, they want to get above 2,500 GDUs. So this map shows you where you have gotten above 2,500 so far in the year. If it's white, you've made it. If you're in green, well, this is the percent of the way toward 2,500 GDUs that we've made it so far. So for example, parts of Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, getting into the Dakotas, we're about 70 to 90% of the way there. I just thought that would add some information to our predictions here of what temperatures have been doing. I also want to give you the latest update on those stress degree days. Remember, if you're under 140 units, where I've color-coded green, we tend to not find yield loss due to heat. But where you are above it, we do expect to see some yield loss. And an area that I'm expecting to see more heat build back in is going to be right here in the midsection of the country. Let's talk about it and finish up this video. Temperatures through the next week. Well, they're going to be changing quite a bit. Here was today's highs on Thursday. Front advances on Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday. But what you're going to notice is with the new trough digging in here by next Monday, a lot of the midsection of the country goes back over into the mid to upper 90s, and we keep those warmer than normal temperatures clear to the East Coast. And that's Monday's highs getting into Tuesday and Wednesday. There's a brief shot at some cooler air, but the models are suggesting that most of the day 5 through 10 time period does see above normal temperatures in this quadrant of North America, maybe 3 to 10 degrees above normal. But this cooler air you see here doesn't last too long. And I'd like to show you what I mean here by going out and looking at the day 10 through 15 time period. The models build back in above normal temperatures in this area. That's both in the GFS and in the European model together. In the long run, and I discussed this more in the in-depth video, but I think most of our long-range pattern is on the MJO curling back over into phases, maybe 8, 1, and 2, rather than doing what I thought it would do, which was swing way out here to phase 5. That means we're going to put the pattern back on repeat out of the tropics. And the latest European weeklies, when looking out at precipitation anomalies through September, look just like this. And in the in-depth video, we talk about the tropical season with respect to this and how a lot of what you get in through here is going to come in isolated storms, not big blankets of wet weather. Isolated storms is what I'm expecting. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. Hope you have a good rest of your week and weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thanks.